Aloha, inspired moneymakers. Welcome to Inspired Money. Thanks for joining me today. If this is your first time here, then welcome. If you're returning inspired moneymaker, welcome back. It's always great to have you with us. Today, we're going to explore classic cars as retirement investments, exploring how timeless vehicles can offer financial returns, personal fulfillment, and a tangible connection to history. From past Inspired Money episodes, some of our guests have suggested that collectibles should not be considered investments, or maybe they're not the best investments. But I do know this: in a time when a car is like a computer on wheels and there's an expectation of self-driving cars coming soon, classic cars are becoming rarer and more cherished by enthusiasts and collectors alike. They've also appreciated in value over the past decade, according to the Knight Frank Luxury Investment Index. So whether you're an experienced collector, curious about alternative investments, or want to explore community through the joy of driving, this episode is for you. Before we jump in, I've been spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, where this episode is being streamed. I recently hit a milestone surpassing 12,000 followers there, and I'd love to connect with you. So go to, I'm saying the wrong link. Go to linkedin.com/IN/advisor Andy. We can connect there, and I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn. Now let's bring in our incredible panelists for today. I'll start with Leslie Kendall. He's chief historian at the Petersen Automotive Museum, where he oversees one of the world's most comprehensive automotive history collections. Known for his encyclopedic knowledge and engaging storytelling, he provides deep insights into cultural and historical significance of classic and collectible cars. Leslie, welcome. Oh, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted now.
Okay, I just was saying I appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you so much.
Excited to have you. We also have Andrew Shirley. He's director at AS Editorial and former head of rural research at Knight Frank, where he created the unique Knight Frank Luxury Investment Index that I referenced a moment earlier. That index tracks the performance of 10 passion assets, including classic cars, art, rare whiskey, and wine. With over 25 years of experience in agricultural, natural capital, and luxury investments, Andrew blends expertise in storytelling with a passion for innovative solutions in farming, sustainability, and property markets. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here, Andy.
We're going to have fun. And then we have Phillip Griot back on the show. He's president and CEO of Griot's Motors, a premier restoration, consignment, and collector car storage business in Tacoma, Washington. Raised by Richard Griot of Griot's Garage, Phillip developed a lifelong passion for car collecting, restoration, and sharing the joy of classic cars through exceptional service. Phillip, you talk about as a kid, you have memories of being in the garage.
Oh, yeah. I had no choice. Thanks for having me back, by the way.
It's awesome to have you back. Apologies for the late start. We had some technical issues behind the scenes, but let's jump right in. Let's go straight to segment one.
Investing in classic cars offers unique financial benefits, with the potential for value appreciation driven by factors such as rarity, condition, provenance, and market demand. Rarity, often limited by production numbers or unique features, significantly increases a car's value over time, Well-maintained or expertly restored vehicles in pristine condition command higher prices, while provenance, such as a car's history of notable ownership or participation in significant events, enhances desirability. Historical trends highlight this market's growth, with classic car values rising by 194% over the past decade, according to Knight Frank data. Iconic examples include the Ferrari 250 GTO, which sold for $48.4 million, and the Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe, sold for $142 million, illustrating the potential for impressive returns. However, classic car investments require careful consideration of costs like maintenance, storage, and insurance. Knowledge of market trends and expert guidance can help investors navigate this asset class and maximize returns.
Leslie, get us started. How does the historic significance of a classic car enhance its financial potential as an investment?
Well, people like to be associated with greatness, and anything that's got that kind of provenance, the kind of relationship with a character in a movie or television show, or a name, a person whose name you recognize, gives that person a little bit of cachet. It gives them a little bit of a connection with something that transcends what they're all about, maybe at the moment. Andy, I think you're muted.
No, I'm muted. Any really cool stories about cool finds at the museum?
Well, we have a lot of interesting things. Sometimes we don't go out and find them; they find us. We have President F.D. Roosevelt's Lincoln limousine, the first one delivered new as an armored car. We've got Elvis's 1971 Pantera that he shot 3 times and it wouldn't start. We've got the Shagmobile, the Volkswagen convertible from Austin Powers, and we have a lot of things. Something for everybody. I like to think we even have behind the scenes stuff, camera bikes and movie star cars.
That is cool. It is a diverse collection for sure. Andrew, from your work at Knight Frank and the Luxury Investment Index, what trends have you observed in the growth of classic car investments compared to other passion assets?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting trajectory, Andy. I mean, when we had the sort of global financial crash in around sort of 2008, and people sort of shied away from some of the traditional investment classes like stocks and shares and bonds, people wanted more tangible type assets. I mean, that's when we saw the sort of growth really start going up significantly from classic cars. I mean, I have to say some of the heat has come out of the market. At the moment, we're not seeing quite such stellar growth as we have some of the indices that I would use, like the Haggy index, have sort of come back a little bit, and we're sort of seeing perhaps declines this year for some of the marks. But one of the things that we did when I edited the Wealth Report, we would do a survey of high net worth individuals and ask, why were they buying these investments of passion? And actually, the top reason was still the joy of ownership. It was, it was having a wonderful car, buying wonderful paintings. The actual investment potential, the growth in value came second. So I think even if they're not going up in value, you've still got an amazing car to be driving around and enjoying the sound of the engine, at least until we all have to drive electric cars or whatever. But I think there's more to collecting these passion assets than just the financial performance.
Yes, you cannot drive your Tesla stock around.
That's true.
Philip, what do you think makes classic cars a particularly appealing choice for people planning their retirement investments?
I think it's probably a great part of a, I think this is your job, but of a balanced portfolio. Some of the best investors I know in the car market find joy in what they do. So it's a massive psychological, on the investment side, it's a relief from the psychological stress of the constant measurement of stocks, of real estate, anything in your portfolio that is, I think, measured daily, highly liquid, easy to sell out of and panic out of. So it's really a position of a group of assets that you really just you hold on to, you love, and they're tangible, they're meaningful to you. You can sit in them, you can smell them, they're important to you. And in a really bad time, they're really hard to sell. So it's kind of a good thing to have, because you're a forced holder of them through some of the bad periods as well. Not that you can't sell them, but you really don't want to.
To what extent have you seen kind of a change in the tide in the last 12 months that Andrew was referencing?
A change in the tide for the market?
Yeah, I think pricing in the market.
Yeah, for car market, it really started in 2022. I think things were just ballistic. It's not surprising to me that things have really slowed down. Cars are still selling. Special cars are still selling very well at incredibly surprising prices to me. But you have to have something unique, something rare. But if it's all the everything surrounding, like the large trend has slowed substantially for, I wouldn't say insignificant cars, but cars that are less rare, less hard to come by. There's been substantial softening in some pockets of the car market for sure.
Leslie, as a curator of the museum, do you see classic cars as an investment or something else?
We see classic cars as a means to explain humankind's material culture. Cars, especially in Los Angeles, which is kind of our focus, we treat them as another layer of clothing. We really put on our cars more than we get into them. We clean them, we wash them, we shine the wheels, because that's at the end of the day or during the middle of the day and every part there through. That's how we present ourselves.
So it's part of fashion. It's a fashion item.
It's a fashion item. You may think you're fully dressed with your overcoat on, but not until you get in your car.
Well, I'm excited to be having this conversation about classic cars. My garage, I'm driving around naked. I probably not the best fashion, but there's potential looking at it.
Depends on where you are. In New York, you better have a nice overcoat and a nice Prada handbag, but in LA, it's different than that.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm okay in New York for now. Let's go to segment 2.
Investing in the right classic car requires a clear understanding of key criteria, thorough research, and careful due diligence. Rarity plays a major role, with limited production runs enhancing a car's value. However, lesser-known rare models, such as the 1964 to 1967 Gordon Keeble, can also gain value due to scarcity and unique features. Condition is also important. Originality, low mileage, and regular maintenance increase worth, while proper storage and documentation add credibility. Historical significance adds value too. Cars connected to iconic events or personalities, such as the Aston Martin DB5 from James Bond films, often command high prices. Finally, market demand influences worth, with interest in American muscle cars and European brands like Porsche and Aston Martin remaining strong. Thorough due diligence involves studying market trends, verifying documentation, and engaging experts for inspection. Budget planning, including maintenance and potential restoration, ensures a sustainable investment approach, potentially yielding both financial returns and personal satisfaction.
Phillip, when your clients come to you, do they already know what they want to buy, or are you advising them on key factors to look for when they're trying to choose a classic car?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think in a lot of cases, people will come to me with an idea of what they want, but a need for more information, maybe a little education on what what the range of prices are, why they are that way, what hidden costs could be associated with the acquisition of a car. Very rare for someone to come in and say, hey, I don't own anything. I don't know what to buy, and I need you to advise me on that. There is the usual question of where are they going? What should I sell in my collection? What should I get rid of? And what should I add? And those questions are becoming frequent right now, as we've seen a trend towards a younger, enthusiastic buyer. People are wondering if their 60s era cars are going to be worth anything 10 years from now. So it's a lot of going back and forth with in regards to console for people's collections, and then finding cars for them. They usually know what they want, but I come in and help them to better understand the values and where they might be and the total cost of that.
Makes sense. Leslie, what characteristics should a novice investor look for in a classic car to really maximize its future value?
Value can be measured in a couple of ways. There's use value, there's enjoyment, there's investment value. It depends on what the person wants out of it. If they want it just as a pure investment, I think you're going to look at a car with high quality, high performance, high style, initially a high price, which all of that keeps it very rare. So all of those characteristics kind of typically contribute to the value of a vehicle. If you're going to use it, you're going to want a car that's a little bit approachable, something that maybe you can fix yourself, or at least get fixed by people whose numbers you have on speed dial.
And it's kind of generational, right? You tend to see like certain cars popular, and then it kind of peaks, and then because people are getting older and they tend to want to collect cars that are meaningful to them and something like that they remember in their youth, then that starts getting popular. Is there a way to try to stay ahead of the curve a little bit?
No. Well, you can try. It does come in waves, though. And what's interesting for me to notice is that you would think that brass era, London to Brighton era cars are not that desirable, but I know plenty of 20 and 30 somethings who crave them, who participate in events like that. They appreciate, not necessarily that they can get around on them, they just appreciate the mechanical artistry about them and the experience of that kind of primitive motoring. It all feeds into everything feeds into everything else. It just depends on what your tolerance is.
And Andrew, are there particular markets or regions where investing in classic cars can be more lucrative?
I think you probably want to be in the areas where you've got the sort of biggest bases of collectors. So that's really Europe and North America, and there's a lot of collectors in South Africa, but that's a slightly more isolated market. So yeah, you want to be where all the restorers are, all the dealers are. Those are the good places to go. But I think, referring back to your last question, how do you sort of predict what the next wave of popular cars is? You probably want to be looking at the posters on sort of kids' bedroom walls, because what we're seeing now is, some of the cars from the 80s, the cars from Miami Vice, the Lamborghinis, some of those really cool Mercedes, and BMW rally cars. Those were the sort of posters that people my age might have had on the wall. They didn't have posters of E-types or the sort of 1960s Ferraris, and the 1960s cars aren't doing so well now, but the sort of 80s supercars, some of those Lamborghinis are actually going up more in value than other cars. So yeah, have a look at what's on the wall, of your kids' bedrooms.
Leslie, you mentioned the influence of pop culture, so you must agree.
Well, I do. I can't help but agree. I think that we just by paying attention and by staying alert to what other people consider important is interesting. We always wanted what we couldn't have when we were in high school, by the time you hit your stride in your 40s and 50s and 60s, you have the resources to indulge those dreams.
Do you recognize any trends happening right now?
The JDM, the Japanese domestic market, is really, really hot, because that's what a lot of people remember. 20 years ago, the thought of collecting a Japanese vehicle was a little bit foreign to a lot of people. But now those are the cars that they're used. Those are the Supras and the reaching back a little bit farther, the 240Zs. I mean, find me a 1970 240Z in marvelous shape, and I'll be all over it. Before that, it was a 2000 GT Toyota, but there's some wonderful things coming out that are rekindling some fantastic memories for people, and that are now very desirable to them.
I want to ask a question to all three of you. I'll start with Leslie. How should investors balance like personal passion with financial prudence when they're evaluating classic cars?
I think another factor is what you're capable of doing. If you can fix your own car, then that kind of helps skew the financial part of it in your favor, because you don't have to have it repaired by somebody else. But it's all up to you. If you rather live in an apartment and drive a Ferrari, have at it. If you want to have an 8-bedroom house on a hill and in Brentwood, and not that driving a Toyota is going to enable you to do that, but that's a choice you get to make.
So yeah, have your priorities. Philip, buy what you love versus what will make financial sense like in 10 years.
Usually they go hand in hand. I think the likelihood of you holding onto a car 10 plus years that you don't love is pretty unlikely. I have found most of my success in the investing side of the business in buying what I like, and buying it at prices that I can't believe that I'm able to buy this car at this price, and I love it. I love everything about it. I take care of it personally, and so I think there's a don't put yourself in a risky position where you might have to sell the car before you want, but always buy what you love. And if you can, always buy the best that you can afford as well. And that comes to rarity, production, options, and then the condition of the car. There's no value, in my opinion, in the car community. Everyone wants to buy the cheapest version possible. They're cheap because they were poorly maintained. They have problems. They've been repainted. And you'll learn that through ownership, and it won't be fun. It's a horrible experience. So
yeah, it's interesting. Everybody has a different approach there, because there are those who just want to buy like the best examples of cars, and then we've had Ed Bolian on the show in the past, and he's looking for those like nightmare stories. Was in an accident, was owned by a drug dealer, and then he wants to restore it, but he bought it at like a dirt cheap price.
Yeah, he's the exception, I would say.
Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I think you've got to find somebody that you trust to help you, because I've seen examples of cars that looked amazing on the surface, but when you sort of chipped away, half the bodywork is full of filler and they've been restored really, really badly. So unless you've got a really good eye yourself and you're really knowledgeable, you need to have somebody who you trust, who will, steer you in the right direction. But you don't have to spend a huge amount of money these days. Sometimes the cars that are really rare now aren't necessarily the cars you would expect to be rare, because a lot of the cars, maybe from my childhood, the 80s, the 70s, or whatever, they were mass produced, but no one, they've all fallen by the wayside, and there might not actually be many examples of them left. Like my mum had a Renault 4. I don't know if anyone ever saw that in the US, but it was like this sort of traditional sort of French curvy little car. millions of them on the road then. But now, actually, there's very, very few of them. And if you see them now, the values are starting to go up. So if you've got really good examples of what were quite commonplace cars 20, 30, 40 years ago, actually, there's now demand for them. They're never going to be worth millions, but they might double in value from what they're worth now. Another car over in Europe, I don't know if you had it in America, was the sort of Peugeot 205 GTI, little hot hatch, but now they're worth a fortune because there's not many of them in good condition left. When I was young, it was a $10,000 car maybe, but yeah, they go for lots of money. So you don't have to look at the really high levels of the market to find something that's going to be fun and going to increase in value.
That's a popular car being imported into the U.S. by people like me, who I just sold a really. I bought one sight unseen, and it was not a great one, but I still loved driving it.
But they were super fun to drive.
Yeah, great cars. Yeah, there's fun. There's fun at every price point. Anyone can pick a great, select a great example and make money on it. You don't need to buy the GTOs and the Shelbys and whatnot. Shelbys haven't gone anywhere for 10 years anyways, but yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in on this selection process?
The one thing I'll say, just going back to the trends right now, being of the age group that is buying my poster cars, I would also be careful of following too closely to the hot trend right now. I am probably cooling on all of the cars that were on my posters. I've owned them already. I've sold them to other buyers who are seeking these cars out. And the difficulty to find these cars, they've all been imported already, or a lot of them have. They've been found in Japan. There used to be, a currency exchange where you could buy into Japan for these JDM cars. That's almost disappeared. So what I'm looking at is when people say the 60s are dead, I'm looking at 60s era cars because I want to buy the cars that people think are dead and never coming back. And they're definitely going to continue to appreciate. And I'm talking about the 90s and 2000 era cars. They will continue the large trend upwards. But I would caution against buying the hottest car out right now, because generally that has just appreciated wildly. So
great advice.
Yeah.
Well, everyone stay tuned, because in segment 5, we're going to try to find out what these guys are buying next. I missed the message on the screen. Let's go to segment 3. We're going to talk about maintenance and care.
Preserving a classic car's value hinges on regular maintenance, proper storage, and occasional professional restoration. Essential upkeep includes checking fluid levels, using additives suited for older engines, maintaining tire health, and inspecting brakes and electrical systems. Short monthly drives keep mechanics in working order and prevent parts from seizing. For storage, a climate-controlled garage prevents rust, and a breathable cover offers protection from dust. Enhanced security measures like upgraded locks help protect valuable assets, while interior care, such as conditioning seats and upholstery, prevents fading and cracking. Professional restoration is valuable for significant repairs and paintwork, adding to the car's worth. Detailed maintenance logs further enhance resale potential, ensuring both enjoyment and investment preservation for years to come.
Andrew, when you created the Knight Frank Luxury Index, does that take into account things like maintenance cost?
No, Andy, no. It's literally the capital value of the asset class. So obviously, when you've got a classic car, you've got a lot of maintenance costs. So you've got to take that into account. A picture that you hang on your wall. There's not really so many costs that you've got to worry about. So no, I mean, that would be virtually impossible, I think, to sort of take into account all of those all of those things. I mean, it's really interesting in your little segment there that you said you have to take the car out to drive it. I was reading Octane magazine the other day, and there was an advert for a really amazing McLaren, which I think was about 10 years old, but it was one of the really limited edition ones, and it said it had only done 3 miles in total, and that just kind of wanted to make me cry, because you've got this amazing car that someone's paid a lot of money for, and it's only driven 3 miles in 10 years. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to balance that line. I mean, I think that the car was meant to be driven, right? And to derive joy in being behind the wheel. Plus, bad things can happen if the car is just not moving at all. Philip, what essential maintenance routines do people have to think about to really preserve the value of a classic car?
Well, preserving the value is really, you just want to make sure that you're regularly driving it. Value for me is what you want to net on the day that you want to sell the car. And you need to protect the amount of work that you have to do. Restorative work is expensive. So for me, you want to be regularly starting the car, running it, and doing regular maintenance to it. That is the best way. I have had people who fully restore a car where we have to almost not rebuild the engine, but go through the fuel tank, the fuel lines, the carburetors, everything, because it's sat for 6 years after the car was restored. They just don't run properly. They need to be brought up to temperature. They need to be run, and you need to be putting fresh fuel through it. Otherwise, draining the tank if you're going to store it for a long period of time. That's the only way. I mean, the low miles cars that haven't moved are almost as big of a nightmare as a preservation restoration or a full restoration to me. Not as much, but you still are you're touching probably every mechanical part on the car.
Yep, it's like the human body. We have to
Right.
keep using it or we lose it. You got to keep
Right.
moving. Keep moving.
Motion is lotion.
It is. And so I guess you're always going to have maintenance costs. These are old cars, 50 years old, 60 years old, and sometimes younger. The cars that are 30 years old that were on my posters, they're needing to be restored now or gone through. And you really want one that has already been maintained well, or you want to, or when owning one, you just want to maintain them as well as you can. You don't want to have huge gaps in that maintenance history. So that's it. I mean, that's part of your investment. How well maintained is your car? Exceptional.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to Michelle and Heidi who are watching on LinkedIn. Michelle was just saying that for your first car, it's great to have a driver car and to use it and to enjoy it. Leslie, as curator of Petersen Museum, I mean, talk about, can one restore a car too much? Or, talk about, can you overdo it?
Yeah,
what's your view?
It's you can overdo it if you want to make a car more than it used to be. Are the people you fool the ones you want to impress? That's kind of something you have to ask yourself. And you also have to ask yourself, what are you in it for anyway? If you want to drive the most chromed out machine possible, have at it, because that'll get you a certain kind of attention. Otherwise, the purist, I think, if you restore something, I'll use the word correctly, as it came out of the factory or the coach builder, then the purists are going to gravitate to that. Those are the easiest, I think, to modify because to keep, because every time you modify something, it's like buying a painting of a portrait of somebody else. That's not your vision. That's not your portrait. Somebody else's. They've had their way with it. But
what are the
cars? In a way, it's the same thing.
What are the best practices for maintaining a car's originality without compromising functionality?
Get a good conservation program. Depending on the kind of car you have, put yourself in touch with a conservator or a restoration shop, because cars are made up of so many different things. Obviously, I mean, glass, rubber, wool, horsehair, steel, aluminum, chrome, you name it. There's so many things that they deteriorate in a different way at a different pace. Somebody once told me, and I think this is a really, really interesting way to put it. If you don't spend, invest in your car every year. For example, if you don't spend $1,000 every year on your car, in 10 years, you're going to have a problem that $10,000 will not be able to correct. So you're going to want to keep it up, keep investment, keep investing in it, because that's truly what it is.
Anyone else want to chime in on this maintenance topic?
No, I guess just generally with the restoration too, to answer the question on how to preserve originality. I mean, it really does start with having a great restoration shop that is knowledgeable specifically on your car, or calling a consultant. And in some cases, we have cars that come in, and I'll bring I'll go down my Rolodex and bring experts in as a shop owner to tell me, the right way to do things. And at the end of the day, from 10 feet away, it might not matter to most people, but for the people who hammer at an auction for the big dollars and who sell privately for the big dollars, they have these questions answered up front, and they have the original parts. You can source them. They're going to be expensive, but there's going to be a return on every correct part in that car. Ideally, you buy a car that never had the correct parts removed. But through the course of ownership history, people did services on their own at shops that had on hand what they had. And so sometimes they walk away. But I think protecting the originality of the car is probably getting in touch with someone before you buy it to certify those things. And in the case of restoration, make sure that the person you are hiring to restore your car is aware that you want a fully original car, and they are capable of providing that to you.
Philip, what's your approach on restoring a car correctly? And Leslie had talked about, a lot of people, you can DIY, work on the car yourself. Like, do you see crazy things when comparing professional restoration versus DIY maintenance?
I opened the hood of a Mercedes 220D. It's an old diesel Mercedes, and it had a light switch as a battery on off, which was homemade. The guy soldered a bunch of stuff in, and part of what I do is undo work that other people do in their shops. So my take on originality and my recommendation to all of my clients is always go original. It has become very popular for my clients to modify older cars and then conceal those modifications in as original looking material as possible. So that's something that we do well, but it's never sold as original. But originality is the best way to protect the value of the car. The moment you start removing things and adding your personal touch to everything, you're just taking buyers out of the room on that day when you sell it. And I've seen, $1 million cars that have gone through $1 million custom restoration, and they sell for $75,000 because they're not worth that to anyone but the person who did that work. So that's the reality of restoration work.
So no Frankenstein light switches.
Well, I'm sure you save money, but
Leslie, do you ever see crazy things, or are you getting like nice specimens coming in front of you?
Well, being a museum that is actually the public trust, we kind of have to be careful of what we accept. The reality is we see crazy things. Some things we accept that people never thought we would, and sometimes people offer us things that is it's like, thank you anyway, really appreciate it. We know your Aunt Fanny had it long before anybody else did, and you had wonderful times in it, but it's just not something that we're looking to collect, preserve, and interpret for all time.
Any specific examples of something crazy?
Well, we accepted a 1951 Simca Wheat Sport in our collection that was entirely original, but needs everything. But everything is there. It's a French car that was designed by Facel Mitterrand in Paris. That was a high-end Simca, but Simca is a lot of it's a car that a lot of people don't appreciate. They automatically construe it as as a cheap French car, and this particular example wasn't. But it needs everything. There's no place to start and no place to stop. But at least you know what it looks like, what it should look like when it's done, because everything is there.
It would be cool to be a fly on Leslie's wall, I think.
As long as the fly can change an oil, that's fine with me.
All right, let's move on to segment 4.
Owning a classic car offers rewards that extend well beyond financial gains. These vehicles often create a deep emotional connection, as owners experience a unique bond rooted in memories and the car's distinctive character. The sensory engagement, sounds, smells, and tactile feedback makes each drive feel like a special event, with vintage touches like leather seats and the hum of a classic engine, evoking a sense of nostalgia. Classic car ownership can connect enthusiasts to vibrant communities. Car shows, rallies, and club events provide opportunities to share stories, celebrate vintage vehicles, and build lasting friendships. Beyond social connections, owners enjoy exclusive experiences, from track laps to scenic rallies, that add to the joy of ownership. For many, classic cars represent a lifelong passion, whether through meticulous restoration or cherished family memories. This enduring love of vintage automobiles enriches lives, offering not just a financial investment, but an experience that combines joy, history, and community.
Andrew, I don't have your Instagram profile up, but I recall you mentioning something about how you enjoy luxury goods and working with luxury items, but classic cars is your favorite. Can you talk about the emotional aspect of car ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all of the 10 different things that we had in the Knight Frank Luxury Investment Index, cars would probably be my my favourite. I mean, I've not been lucky enough to own some very expensive cars in my life, but some of the cars that I have owned, there's a real emotional connection that I have with them. I used to live in Africa, and I had a very early 1974 Range Rover that had been converted into a safari vehicle with hatches in the roof and all of those sorts of things. And those early Range Rovers are really collectible now. But you just think back to the times that you had in Africa, looking at wildlife and whatever with all your friends in that car. So that that car was an important part of my history. And there was one guy that I interviewed. He collected Beetles, and in fact, he had every single variant of Beetles ever made, and you wouldn't believe how many different variants of the Beetle there is, going right back to the sort of early ones from Germany in the Second World War. But he actually started collecting them because the Beetle was the car that he was dating his girlfriend, who then became his wife in. So they just had this sort of mutual happy memory of Beetles, and then he made a lot of money, so then he decided to collect them, and now he's got a warehouse that's so big you can't imagine, just full of Beetles. So I think cars really resonate with us in ways that other things don't. And I was lucky to go to the Manhasset, on Long Island, Concours of Elegance, and I was sort of helping a little bit and doing some interviews, and there were two guys with Tomazzo Panteras next to each other. And what we decided to do would be really fun, would be to have a rev off. So they were these two guys with their Panteras, just sort of revving them as loud as they could. But it was so cool, and all the kids there just thought it was amazing. So just I think cars do something to us that more passive investments of passion can't really do.
Leslie, you talked about that investing in a car is more than just the monetary value, that there is this emotional connection. Can you talk about that? Like, not only in the work that you do, but I imagine all the visitors who come through the museum. That's what it's all about, right?
There is that that gut connection that we have with cars, and it goes beyond the memories too, because cars are, I'll call them in many ways art, objects that kinetic art that you can interact with. Motion through space is very exciting. It's very exciting to watch a car go by. It's very exciting to sit in a car when somebody who's very capable is driving it. And it's also very exciting to drive it yourself, knowing that you have all that power at your hands. Cars trip so many triggers for people that it's no wonder there's so many out there and there's so many different tastes.
Yeah, I wonder what happens if we do have like self-driving vehicles and there are fewer and fewer classic cars, or at least I guess the need for restoration increases. Like, do we reach a point where it's harder and harder to really find these cars that people enjoy?
I think it's harder. I think it's going to be more difficult because people aren't going to relate to cars in the same way. Ultimately, that's just how it's going to lay out. We used to, drive around in horse-drawn carriages, and as soon as those went away, I don't see a whole lot of horse-drawn carriage museums or people with a lot of horse-drawn carriage posters on their wall, like, "Ooh, the Wild West, wouldn't that have been great?" But I don't think anybody thinks that anymore. I think they've moved on from the stagecoach into SUVs.
There are still train museums that are pretty popular.
Trains still exist. People still get out there. You can still ride a train somewhere, and I like train travel. I love it.
Philip, what feedback do you often hear from clients about this emotional fulfillment that they get from owning their car?
I spend a lot of time with my clients in their cars and watching their reaction when, after we've finished a project for them or after we've found a car for them. And it is emotional. And to come back to what Leslie was saying, it's more than just a sitting art piece. You can drive it, and there's a visceral exhaust note. There's a smell of the gas. There's the feel of the leather, the smell of the leather as well, in certain cars, and that brings people back to generally a pretty hard set memory of riding along with dad or their grandfather or their mom, and how it was when they were in that car. It's a very emotional passage in time for a lot of these people, and whether it's a substantial collection or someone has a one personal car that they baby in their garage, I can have conversations with everyone across. I've had conversations with people that I don't speak the same language as them, but through pointing and facial gestures, we both agree that what we were looking at is an amazing vehicle. And it's a funny environment, and it's global. You can find car enthusiasts everywhere, and it's such a great community that it makes me very warm thinking about how much joy these automobiles bring people. It's very important.
It's cool that it transcends language and culture, that people just enjoy the cars equally.
Thank you for putting that a lot better than I could.
Andrew, how do you incorporate these like intangible aspects of valuing something?
I suppose I don't incorporate them. It's the market that's incorporating them, isn't it? Like you referred earlier to the DB5, the James Bond car. I mean, actually, you could buy a DB6. It's probably slightly rarer and a slightly better car, but actually it's not as valuable as the DB5 because it doesn't have that sort of James Bond, the silver birch color and all of those sorts of things that really resonate with people. So it's kind of the market itself that's valuing those intangibles. It's not something that I need to do.
Yeah, I guess that will dictate the price. The price will dictate. The price will tell us what's moving people emotionally, because it is so closely intertwined. Let's go to segment 5, we're going to talk about future trends.
The classic car market is evolving, with trends showing increased interest in 1980s and 1990s models. Younger collectors are drawn to cars like the BMW E46 M3 and early 2000s Porsche 911s, reflecting a generational shift in nostalgic appeal. Restomods, where vintage cars are restored with modern technology, are also popular, blending classic aesthetics with updated performance features. High-quality, rare vehicles remain stable in demand, especially those with strong documentation and condition. Emerging opportunities include investing in lesser-known models like the Mitsubishi Pajero Evolution, or exploring the niche of electric vehicle conversions, which have gained traction in auctions. Risks, however, include market volatility and the costs of maintaining and storing these vehicles. Looking ahead, the market is expected to stabilize, with modern classics gaining further traction. The integration of modern tech through Restomods and EV conversions is set to expand, offering a balance of reliability and nostalgia. With these insights, investors can navigate the shifting landscape of classic car investments effectively.
Andrew, you talked about car prices really taking off, I think, after the financial crisis. How do you see, or how important is it for people to watch macroeconomic trends and maybe even shifting generational wealth affecting demand for classic cars?
Well, I suppose how important it is how important the car is to you as a pure investment. If you're owning it for, passion purposes, it's probably more relaxing not to have to worry too much about those things. But if investment is important, you've got to look at these big, sort of macro trends, not specifically for classic cars, but the market for rare whiskey, which I've also looked at. That was going crazy because there was a lot of Chinese demand from Hong Kong, and then as the Chinese economy cooled, that's really taken the heat out of that market. So, if investment is really your thing, you do need to look at what is happening in other parts of the world and identify the factors that are sort of specific to a particular market, who's buying into that market, what issues might be limiting their ability to spend on those particular asset classes, which is why I always keep coming back to the sort of the passion and the joy of ownership, because if that's what you focus on, then it can be a more relaxing journey for you than just having to worry about how much it's going to be going up or it's going to be down, because then you come back to monitoring your sort of stock portfolio, which can be a really stressful kind of thing.
Yeah, it's hard watching the tape. Just invest in what you love. Kind of a Warren Buffett approach, except you can drive your car.
Yeah.
Leslie, last time we talked about cars on Inspired Money, I think the panelists all poo-pooed unanimously the idea of EV conversions, of taking old cars and converting them to EV. What are your views there?
Well, that's actually been happening for a lot longer than people think. There are cars like the electric Leopard, which was a Renault converted to electric. There were the Silver Volt, which is any number of General Motors cars converted to electric in the day, in the 70s, when gas was going to be a thing of the past after the oil shocks of the late 1973. But I think anything well done, anything connected with an important name, a name that's associated with quality, will in and of itself become interesting to people. It's like hot rods today. It's like they're no longer 32 Fords. They're now the McGee Roadster or the fill in the blank coupe. They transcend their original purpose, and they're now associated with an important builder that had something to do with it. And also, I think a lot of people just aren't going to want the headache of a gas powered car. I mean, even Prince Harry didn't want to leave it to chance when he took off for his honeymoon. He had an E-Type converted to electricity.
And I'm not sure. I think my mouth. I think my mouth said anonymous when my brain said unanimous. If I said that, I knew that I was saying the wrong thing. Any any um, any views into emerging market trends looking ahead?
No. I think I don't mean to be glib, but I think that the goal keeps moving. It's we'll know maybe in 5 years something will happen that we will just not see coming, and all of a sudden things will be completely different. Generally, though, it's it feels like what we liked in high school, and to the degree that that holds true for people, that might end up being it.
Definitely moving goalposts. Philip, what trends do you see among your clients' preferences? And you even talked a little bit earlier about for yourself, like trying to find some underappreciated car models as trends change.
Yeah, I mean the trends are definitely in the younger cars. In the 90s and early 2000s, and a lot of these people are bringing me cars that are in great condition, that might have wear or they're low miles investor cars, and they need not restorations, but they need to be touched up and made to be perfect because they've been driven at some point. So I think the trends, I think you've got big trends and then small trends. And I think the big trends are always going to be that the big manufacturers, Porsche, Ferrari, Chevy, Ford, are going to Bugatti, the big collector cars are always going to be the big collector cars. And you want to find cars in and under those umbrellas. The small trends are that over the last 4 years, and it's probably a longer term trend, people are moving to a younger car. It's because there's a huge influx of a younger generation of buyer. But for me, as an investor and a buyer and someone who's restored cars, all these things go with taste. And 2013, 2014 is when Singer was releasing their first cars. It became the most popular thing to do over the last 10 years to resto-mod a car. And it's becoming so expensive to go out and buy a resto-modded anything to the point where you're getting $1 million plus for any specialty car, that for me, people are coming back to, okay, what's fun for my money? What's enjoyable? What's a great driver? And that's, I think, where the money is going to go back to, is accessible cars that are easy to get into and enjoy. And that's I think we've gone a little wild over the last 4 years with the highly speculative, forced rarity cars that will probably hold their value, but I can't see that trend of high level resto mods continuing for the next 10 years. I think something will break.
So passion investment should remain fun. Any closing thoughts from Leslie or Andrew?
I just think that sometimes cars are important for what they're not, and I think we have to admit that. When we did a Mustang exhibit, everybody thought there's no way we'd have a Mustang 2, but we wanted one so badly and had such difficulty finding one that we ended up buying a 1974 Mustang 2 in Palm Springs, and I drove it from Palm Springs to the museum, and doing so exemplified for me the difference between being noticed and being looked at. So there's a lot of different things to consider when you're buying a car, and it just depends again on how you want to present yourself.
Ooh, being noticed over being looked at. I like that. Andrew?
Yeah, I think probably, if we put ourselves maybe 10 years forward, assuming Elon Musk has conquered the world and all of the cars on the roads are self-driving cars, the cars that we'll want to collect or own are going to be the really fun cars, the ones that we can, take a break from these electric cars that drive themselves. Maybe we're going to take them to a track, or if we're still allowed to go on the roads, we're going to have a nice nice drive in them, but it's going to be cars that don't need a huge amount of maintenance because we just want to take them out every so often. Maybe some of the more modern cars have got lots of electronics. Those are things that might not be particularly easy to replace, so you don't want anything too complicated. So just a really fun, easy to look after car that's not going to be too much trouble. I think in 10-20 years time, those are the cars that will be in demand, in my opinion.
I love it. Anyone else? I think that's going to be a wrap. Well, thank you. What an insightful discussion. I really enjoyed it. A big thank you to Leslie, Andrew, and Philip for sharing their insights and stories. I think for me, the big takeaway is that if cars are a passion investment, it's something that's got to be fun and something that you enjoy, because it's not just about dollars and cents, although you do have to pay attention to that too. So we learned about classic cars, the historical significance, the stories behind it, the connections to Hollywood and the big screen, whether you're trying to be noticed or seen and what you're trying to get out of your car. Whatever it is, there are so many personal connections that carry so much significance, and it can elevate the value beyond dollars and cents. It's a powerful reminder that these vehicles are not just investments. They're living pieces of history that connect us to our shared past. So as a call to action, inspired moneymakers, this week, take one step toward exploring the world of classic cars. That could be considering attending a local car show in the new year, or maybe it's researching iconic models that resonate with you. Maybe it's going to the Petersen Automotive Museum. Let today's episode spark your journey into this fascinating space where passion meets investment. Thank you to the panelists. I want to encourage everyone to follow them, and you can find Leslie Kendall, who is Chief Historian at Petersen Automotive Museum at petersen.org. Leslie, you have a book coming out in the fall. Can you share a title or some information?
Yeah, real briefly, it's called Defying Detroit, Automobiles Manufactured in Southern California. And when I thought I'd have difficulty filling a pamphlet, but it turns out that I ended up with 200,000 words, which comes out to about 500 pages, because there were 800 manufacturers since 1896 in Southern California, legitimate manufacturers that endeavored to sell on the retail market. So LA is quite a place. We can't build cars, but boy, we sure enjoy them.
A volume for car enthusiasts. Andrew Shirley, you can find him and me at LinkedIn. Search for Andrew Shirley, and you can find him at AS Editorial. Andrew, what kind of things will you be writing at AS Editorial?
Well, hopefully things that I really find fascinating and enjoy writing about. I mean, I've just done a report about how AI is going to influence the art market, which was really interesting. You might think that a lot of artists would be completely scared of all of these sort of AI engines that can create whatever you like, but actually the artists themselves are harnessing the power of AI to boost their own creativity. So that's something that I've just written, which is really interesting. Hopefully there'll be some reports about cars. If anyone out there would like a report about cars, please do get in touch.
Awesome. And thank you to Phillip Griot for returning on Inspired Money and returning to the episode since he dropped off for a second. He's president and CEO of Griot Motors. You can find him at griotmotors.com. Anything else you wanted to share, Philip?
Not at this time. If you're looking to buy a car or restore a car, give us a call.
Awesome. Well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Inspired Moneymaker, for joining us for this episode. We're going to be back next week in what could be the final episode of 2024. We have watch collecting as legacy treasures, timepieces for retirement generations. That's scheduled for next week, Wednesday, December 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everyone.